Hello there and welcome back to the channel. Today we have a very delightful movie to talk about. It's James Gunn's final hurrah in the Marvel Universe, the third movie of its trilogy, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I'll be giving you my official review of the movie, everything I thought about it, how much I loved it, or how much I didn't love it. I won't spoil yet. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 has an 82% critic score, certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, and a 94 audience score. I will not lie, I am leaning a lot more towards the audience in this one. In Marvel Studios' Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, our beloved band of misfits are looking a bit different these days. Peter Quill, still reeling from the loss of Gamora, must rally his team around him to defend the universe along with protecting one of their own. A mission that, if not completed successfully, could quite possibly lead to the end of the Guardians as we know them. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is rated PG-13, came out this year, obviously directed by James Gunn, the mastermind behind a lot of these comic book movies that we have come to love over these past couple years. So let's stop the chit-chat and let's get into the review. Now, I'm not gonna lie, coming fresh off the heels of Ant-Man Quantumania, I was mixed on how to receive this movie, dealing with a family that has faced a lot and is going to face a villain such as Kang. I was willing to put my thoughts aside and give this movie some hope, give Ant-Man Quantumania all the hope that I had left, and ultimately I was disappointed. I was kind of let down. So then the topic of discussion on the internet was then, okay, it's on to the next one. We have Guardians Volume 3. There's no way it could let us down. We know what these movies have in store. Volume 1 and Volume 2, some of the most highly held movies in the Marvel franchise. There's no way Volume 3 lets us down. James Gunn has already done more than enough with Guardians 1 and 2. You take this band of heroes that you have to kind of make us love and care about. You have to make us want to go to the movies to see what they're doing next. And so that is a lot on its own, and he was able to master that. But with this movie, there was a ton of pressure. It's the end of the trilogy. It's your last hurrah with Marvel, and then you move on to the next company over on the other side of the pond. You go and play with the other kids, and you leave this friend group that you've grown up with. But coming off the heels of a movie like Ant-Man Quantumania, something that didn't really start out Phase 5 in a bang. It didn't set up our new big bad in the best way at all. I was kind of nervous going into this movie. So then I guess after we got out of the theater, after I got out of the theater, you're wanting to know, did Guardians Volume 3 do what it needed to do? And my answer is yes, 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 1,000 times yes. I love this movie. It is one of my favorite Marvel movies of all time. I cried so much, I laughed so much, and by the end of it, I just wanted to go watch it again. It is such a delightful movie, and I'm going to break it down into detail. I'm going to break down everything I love. This will be spoilers because I unfortunately was not able to catch the movie on Thursday or Friday. I was out of state, and so I watched it the Monday after. We did a podcast episode on it, Words from the Nerds podcast, shameless plug, here on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts on audio. It's all there. So let's talk about Guardians Volume 3. James Gunn wraps up this trilogy in a surprisingly satisfying way. The backbone of this movie, Rocket Raccoon and his tragic backstory, takes a dark turn. We've had our fair share of teases of this in previous Marvel projects, such as him dealing with prosthetic limbs and his speech with Yondu, and a couple of other small arguments he's had with the Guardians in the past. We know that Rocket is a troubled character. He seems to be closed off and not always emotionally available. We'll get some times where we see him protecting the Guardians, and you can tell that he loves this group of family so much, but he can't ever seem to bring himself to the reality of that one day he might lose them. We get a moment in Guardians Volume 2 where he closes the door and electrocutes Gamora, I believe, and he says, I can only lose one friend today. And this concept of Rocket and this question of who he is as a person, who he is as a being, and what more there is to his character is sprinkled out along other MCU movies. In this third movie, we finally explore it, and it is some of the saddest character work in the entire MCU. And I think that's what makes this entry so special. We learn who these characters are in the first movie. We get a fun, wacky adventure in the first one with some emotional moments. The second one comes in, it's overall funny, but there are also some really sad moments about Peter Quill and his overall family. But in this third movie, to close out the trilogy, we wrap up almost every character's arc while still giving us that time to sob uncontrollably in the theater. It's bittersweet, emotional, yet a beautiful send-off to this family that we've learned to love over these past 9 years. And keep in mind, James Gunn is making this movie 6 years off of Guardians Volume 2, and for it to be this good and for us to be wrapped back up in this story to where we can care about these characters again, to where we can sob over these characters, we have to give even more flowers to him for even being able to make this movie as good as it was, given everything that happened in 2018. And given that we've already talked a little bit about the Guardians and what makes you love this movie so much, wrapping up all of their character arcs, I want to touch a little bit on our characters that contribute to this story as well, because while watching this movie, I couldn't help but just appreciate and love how we touched on every single character and closed up all of their arcs in a beautiful way. Now, Peter Quill is the first character that we get introduced out of this group of Guardians in the very first movie, and since then he's been through a lot. I mean, we look at the events of Infinity War and Endgame, losing Gamora, getting her back, and so we knew that would be a plot point in this movie. We would get to see a little bit more of that because we knew that Gamora was in fact gonna play a role in this story. And so he's been so hung up on that. He's been wanting that girlfriend back, even though she doesn't remember who he is. She won't give him the time of day, and it's overall a tough situation. When you think of MCU relationships, the first one that comes to mind is not Peter Quill and Gamora, but at the end of this movie, you're sitting there and you're like, why have I not been obsessing over this more? Now I'm heartbroken that she has to leave, but I'm also proud of Peter Quill that he has gotten over that hump. He's gotten over that hill, and he's finally letting her go. He understands that there is no getting her back, and that there really is no point in trying anymore, because you just can't spark that flame up again. And so you have to let her go. And her just looking at him and saying, I bet we were fun, was just a heartbreaking moment. It's another moment that I was sitting in the theater crying. I'll admit it. And of course, she is also used as a vessel to kind of make him realize that he should probably get in touch with his grandpa again. He should probably go back to his family on Earth and at least check up on his grandpa, if anything. And so I think that was a beautiful closure, a beautiful send-off for his character as well. Peter Quill got his arc wrapped up beautifully. Now, Mantis and Drax, I want to talk a little bit about them because we just recently saw them in the Guardians Holiday Special. Now, these two characters are always used for comic relief at points. They can give off some emotional depth, but for the most part, they're just kind of there to give you some funny jokes and play off of the other Guardians a bit. However, they did both share a very emotional scene in this. And as we know, Mantis has just came out, and we found out that she was Peter Quill's sister, and so they play on that a little bit. But for the majority of the movie, we're hammering home Mantis and Drax relationship together. Mantis has a very powerful scene where she defends Drax and how important he is to their group. And overall, it's very touching just seeing how important Drax is. I know Batista has come out in interviews and he has kind of criticized the character of Drax, and a lot of people have also criticized the character of Drax and how he's kind of just quote unquote big dumb idiot, and they even say that in the movie. But she comes out and she kind of defends him, and it kind of feels like she's talking to some people in the audience as well. But overall, it plays off as a very emotional scene, especially because after that, Drax comes in and pries even more tears from your eyes, and he talks to the little kids that are in the big ship of High Evolutionary, and you can see his inner dad coming out. And we know from other movies that Drax's wife and daughter were killed at the hands of Thanos. And so to wrap up Drax's arc and hear Nebula talk to him and say, you were never meant to be a destroyer, you were meant to be a dad, was a truly, truly touching moment. Nebula also gets a great send-off. She comes to this realization of just how much this family means to her, and she gets to lay back and be the leader of the city that is nowhere. I thought that was a great end for her character too, kind of leaves her right there where we could still use her in the future. Same as Groot, he had some pretty touching scenes. Seeing him talk to Gamora and twiddle his fingers, it was just some of the cutest thing I've ever seen in the MCU, and so those two characters get a great send-off as well. But arguably the man who stole the show, who it would be a shame for me not to bring up in this review, Chakotay Awuji's High Evolutionary. Now I see people saying top 5, and if I'm being honest, I might even say top 3 Marvel villain of all time. It's very rare that Marvel has a villain that has little to no redemptive qualities at all, but this man has nothing going for him. I can see people sympathizing with Killmonger. I can see people sympathizing with Thanos. But you're telling me a man who wants to take these animals and experiment on them, for him to make a perfect world, deserves any type of sympathy? You got everything all wrong. There's even a moment, and I can't lie, this is a bar. I can't lie, this was such a hard line where he says, "There is no God, that's why I had to step in." And dare I say it was a banger. Dare I say it was a banger, but this man, you cannot help but hate him. And I cannot stress enough how amazing Chakotay Awuji's delivery was in multiple points of this movie. Not only is he one of the worst people to ever live in this universe, but he plays this character with such intensity that every single time he steps on screen, you can feel the fear. You have no idea what he's gonna do next, how far he will take it, because this man has nothing holding him back. He has his own drive, and there is nothing that can stop him, and it makes him the scariest person on screen. And it's crazy how this movie managed to make High Evolutionary look more of a threat than Kang in Ant-Man Quantumania. This is what we wanted in Kang. It's a big reason why everything with Lylla, Floor, and Teefs was as emotional as it was. Seeing Rocket deal with the High Evolutionary taking away his friends, and now he's being hunted down by the man who did it, who's also trying to take out his newfound family. It was also great. It made it so terrifying, and the flashbacks worked as a vessel to kind of get that point across. And I can see why some people didn't connect with these characters. I wasn't so emotional because I had that connection with them. I was more just knowing where their fate was gonna go. I knew how this story was gonna end up, and that is the reason why every time we got these flashbacks, I was an emotional mess. And with every conversation that this group of animals had, it just kept twisting the knife a little bit more. But it was great because it finally gave us that closure on Rocket's story. It finally explained everything that we've been wondering over these past 4 movies, the 2 Avengers movies and the 2 Guardians movies. And just so that I'm touching base with all the characters, I want to talk a little bit about Adam Warlock. Now, a couple years ago, we might have been freaking out as to why he wasn't a bigger part in this movie, but I think obviously things have changed. I still loved his addition. He was kind of like this comic relief character, but at the same time he wasn't, because he was supposed to be this baby that was taken out of his cocoon a little bit early, and so now he's taking everything literal. But he offered some of the most hilarious scenes in this movie, and it was so great. I loved his addition nonetheless. I won't lie, the entire time I was waiting for him to show that good side, turn that other cheek. I knew it was coming, and when it finally did, it made me so happy. I'm glad that we're gonna get to see more of him in the future, now that he is a new Guardian of the Galaxy, this new group of heroes that we can keep an eye on moving forward. I'm glad Adam Warlock is in that conversation. All in all, this is one of my favorite entries in the entire MCU. I think I have it as my number 5 favorite MCU movie of all time. It is no joke how much I love this. The more I think about it, the more I'm obsessed with it. The visual effects were second to none. I mean, I had no problems with the CGI and the visuals in this movie. It was flawless in terms of that. But yes, this group of weirdos that we learned to love over the past almost decade of the MCU, making it out, it just feels so bittersweet, and it's so great. You can see that James Gunn carefully crafted everything in this movie. It just feels like there was so much love and attention to detail put into these characters and how they got wrapped up. No one really got Left Behind, and to just see all the care that he put into this, it made for an amazing movie. It made for a great trilogy as well. I would even go as far as saying this is the best superhero trilogy of all time, and that's a ton of props to James Gunn and the actors in this movie, the people that made these characters so lovable. And just to close out, I wanted to say something that I saw online. Someone said this is a James Gunn movie first and an MCU movie second. And honestly, I couldn't agree more. So with that, my final rating of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is a 92 out of 100. And I have this movie, get ready for it, as my number 2 favorite movie of the year. I love going in and getting a good little cry, feeling emotional, laughing, and overall just being taken back by what I'm watching transpire on screen. These action scenes, I mean, the last fight that the Guardians have together as a group, it was amazing. The soundtrack, obviously, we knew that was gonna bang. Everything just worked amazing together. Everything was just fit so greatly together. The story moving into the next step, and everything that happens in the beginning, kind of you being that vessel for the entire movie. Rocket getting taken out by Adam Warlock in the beginning of the movie basically sets off this domino effect that gave us the 2.5-hour spectacle that we got to watch. What did you think of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3? Let me know in the comments. Have a little conversation with me. Check out the Words from the Nerds podcast here on YouTube. We just did an episode 2 hours long with Benja Movies. Go check it out if you want to just pop that in while you're working or on a drive. It's great conversation. And if you want to show some love here too, I would appreciate that a lot. Let me know what you thought of Guardians Volume 3 in the comments down below. And without further ado, that's my review for Guardians Volume 3. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.